Let me start by saying, I never imagined my life would turn into something out of a movie. But here I am, an old man with a story that's equal parts frustrating and empowering. I'm not the kind of person who seeks attention or drama. In fact, most days, you'd find me quietly working in my little corner of the world, trying to make sense of the ideas buzzing around in my head. You see, I've always been an inventor at heart. Ever since I was a kid, I loved taking things apart and putting them back together, sometimes better than before. Over the years, I came up with some pretty interesting ideas. Some worked, others didn't. But one invention changed everything for me. It was a special material, a self-healing polymer, that could fix itself when damaged. Imagine buildings that repair their own cracks or medical devices that last longer without breaking down. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. When Innovatech Corp approached me, I felt like I'd hit the jackpot. This was a big company, the kind that had money, resources, and connections I could only dream of. They promised me they'd help bring my invention to the world. All I had to do was join their team and let them handle the business side of things. At the time, it sounded like a fair deal. So I signed on, handed over the patents, and got to work. For a while, everything seemed great. I had a nice office, coworkers who respected my knowledge, and access to tools I never thought I'd be able to afford. The company even started making products based on my invention, and they were selling like hotcakes. Everyone was happy, or so I thought. But then things started to change. My health wasn't getting any better. Diabetes and arthritis made it harder to keep up with the long hours. And honestly, I think some people at the company noticed. Instead of offering support, though, they acted like I was slowing them down. Whispers followed me in the hallways. Meetings happened without me. It was like I was fading into the background, becoming invisible. And then came Karen. She was the new CEO, all sharp suits and sharper words. From the moment she took over, she made it clear she wanted results. Everything became about numbers, profits, and cutting costs. People joked that she cared more about spreadsheets than actual humans. But I tried to stay positive. After all, I believed in what I was doing. I believed in the impact my invention could have on the world. That belief came crashing down one Friday afternoon. Karen called me into her office, along with 2 security guards. Yes, you heard that right. Security guards. She sat behind her desk, looking at me like I was nothing more than a bug she needed to squash. "Harold," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "we appreciate your contributions, but we need to focus on efficiency moving forward. You're no longer a good fit for this company." Just like that, I was fired, in front of everyone, humiliated, treated like I was worthless. As they led me out of the building, I couldn't believe what had just happened. How could someone throw away decades of hard work like it meant nothing? But as angry as I was, something else bubbled beneath the surface. Determination. Because deep down, I knew something Karen didn't. Those patents, the ones tied to the company's success, they still belonged to me. And if she thought she could push me aside without consequences, she was dead wrong. That night, as I sat alone in my dimly lit living room, the weight of what had happened finally hit me. The humiliation, the betrayal, it all swirled together in a storm of emotions I couldn't quite untangle. But beneath the anger and sadness, something else began to surface. Clarity. For the first time since being escorted out of Innovatech, like some kind of criminal, I started thinking clearly. I grabbed the old folder where I kept copies of every document related to my invention. Patents, contracts, emails, it was all there. As I flipped through the pages, one fact became glaringly obvious. Karen and her company didn't own the patents outright. They were still in my name. Somehow, during all the years I'd worked for them, no one had bothered to transfer full ownership. Legally speaking, that meant Innovatech couldn't use my invention without my permission. At first, I thought I must have made a mistake. Maybe I missed something. So I double-checked everything. cross-referencing dates and signatures. But no matter how many times I looked, the truth remained the same. The patents belonged to me. Every product they'd built using my polymer, the ones raking in billions, was technically illegal without my consent. The realization sent a shiver down my spine. I wasn't just an old man who'd been wrongfully fired anymore. I held the power to bring down one of the biggest tech companies in the industry. It felt surreal, almost like a plot from a movie. Here I was, sitting in my worn-out recliner, holding the keys to their entire empire. But what should I do with this knowledge? Part of me wanted to march back into Innovatech's headquarters, throw the documents on Karen's desk, and demand an apology. Another part wondered if I could simply walk away, leaving them to figure it out on their own. After all, they'd already shown how little they valued me. Why should I care about their problems now? Then reality set in. This wasn't just about revenge or teaching Karen a lesson. It was bigger than that. If I did nothing, the company would continue profiting off my work while treating others the way they treated me. What kind of example would that set? More importantly, what message would it send to future inventors? That their ideas could be taken, exploited, and discarded without consequence. No, I couldn't let that happen. This was my chance to stand up, not just for myself, but for anyone who'd ever been pushed aside or underestimated. Still, I knew I couldn't take on a corporate giant alone. I needed help, someone who understood the law and could guide me through the mess I was about to step into. The next morning, I called Rachel, a lawyer I'd met years ago at a community event. She was smart, tough, and had a reputation for fighting for the underdog. When she answered the phone, I explained everything: the firing, the patents, the potential leverage I had over Innovatech. There was a long pause on the other end before she spoke. "Harold," she said, her tone shifting from casual to serious, "you might have the case of a lifetime here." Her words gave me hope, but also a sense of responsibility. This wasn't going to be easy. Going up against a massive corporation meant facing lawyers, media attention, and possibly even threats. But deep down, I knew it was the right thing to do. If Karen thought firing me was the end of the story, she was dead wrong. By the time I hung up with Rachel, a plan began forming in my mind. We'd start with a cease and desist letter, demanding that Innovatech halt production until we negotiated proper terms. Then, depending on how they responded, we'd escalate things further. It wouldn't be quick or painless, but I was ready. Ready to fight for what was mine. Ready to show Karen and everyone else that you don't mess with someone's life's work and expect to get away with it. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of energy, a fire I hadn't felt in years. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for sure: Karen had awoken a sleeping lion, and lions don't back down easily. The next day, Rachel and I got to work. She walked me through every step of the plan, breaking it down in a way that even someone like me, someone who'd spent more time tinkering with machines than dealing with legal jargon, could understand. First, we drafted a cease and desist letter. It was simple but powerful, stating clearly that Innovatech's use of my invention without proper authorization violated patent law. They had to stop production immediately or face legal consequences. Rachel also warned me about what might come next. "Once they get this letter," she said, leaning across her desk, "they're going to panic. Companies like Innovatech don't like surprises. And trust me, Harold, this is going to feel like a bomb going off in their boardroom." I nodded, trying to imagine the chaos our letter would cause. Would Karen lose sleep over it? Would her polished image crack under the pressure? The thought gave me a small sense of satisfaction, but I reminded myself why I was doing this. This wasn't about making her squirm. It was about setting things right. When the letter arrived at Innovatech headquarters, the effect was almost immediate. News spread fast, both inside the company and out. Employees whispered nervously in hallways, worried about layoffs and stock prices plummeting. Investors started calling emergency meetings, and Karen, well, she didn't take it well. Reports filtered back to me through former colleagues still willing to talk. Apparently, Karen called an emergency meeting with her top executives as soon as she read the letter. From what I heard, she paced around the room, yelling about how I'd betrayed the company. Betrayed. The irony made me laugh. If anyone had betrayed anyone, it was her, firing me without a second thought, and acting like my decades of hard work meant nothing. Meanwhile, the media caught wind of the story. A local reporter wrote an article titled, "Innovatech Under Fire. Patent Dispute Threatens Billion-Dollar Empire." Overnight, the situation went from being a private battle between me and the company to something everyone was talking about. Friends and acquaintances reached out, congratulating me for standing up to such a powerful corporation. Strangers sent messages of support, sharing their own stories of unfair treatment by big businesses. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't alone. Back at home, Rachel kept me updated on Innovatech's response. At first, they tried to play it cool, issuing vague statements saying they were confident in resolving the matter swiftly. But behind closed doors, panic was setting in. Their legal team scrambled to find loopholes in my patents, searching for anything they could use against me. Unfortunately for them, Rachel had already combed through every detail, ensuring there were no weak spots. As the days passed, the tension grew thicker. Every morning, I woke up wondering if today would be the day Karen finally cracked. Would she try to negotiate? Would she lash out publicly? Or would she dig her heels in and refuse to budge? Whatever she chose, I knew one thing for sure. She couldn't ignore me anymore. One evening, as I sat in my workshop tinkering with a new project, a habit I'd returned to since leaving Innovatech, I realized something important. This fight wasn't just about money or pride. It was about proving that people like me mattered. Inventors, creators, dreamers, we weren't disposable pieces in someone else's game. We were the foundation of innovation itself. And if standing up to Karen helped others see that, then all the stress and uncertainty would be worth it. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was yet to come. Karen wasn't the type to give up easily, and I knew she'd pull out all the stops to protect her empire. But I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing I had justice and the law on my side. It was a crisp Tuesday morning when Karen showed up at my doorstep. I wasn't expecting her. She'd made it clear through her lawyers and public statements that she thought I was being unreasonable, even greedy. But there she was, standing on my porch in her perfectly tailored suit, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was tied back too tightly, her makeup slightly smudged, and for the first time, she didn't look untouchable. She looked human. For a moment, I just stared at her, unsure of what to say. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, to make her feel even a fraction of the humiliation I'd felt when she fired me. But another part, the part that still believed in fairness, told me to hear her out. So I stepped aside and let her in. She hesitated before walking past me, glancing around my modest living room as if she'd never seen anything so ordinary. "Harold," she began, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "we need to talk." I gestured toward the couch, though every instinct in me wanted to keep her standing. Let her feel uncomfortable for once. Instead, I folded my arms and leaned against the doorway, waiting. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. For a second, I thought I misheard her. Karen admitting fault. That was about as likely as snow in July. But she continued, stumbling over her words like they were foreign to her. "Firing you. It was premature. You've been an important part of this company, and we value your contributions." I almost laughed. Value. After everything she'd done, after treating me like I was expendable, she had the nerve to say they valued me. I kept my expression neutral, though, letting her squirm a little longer. "We can offer you your job back," she went on, regaining some of her usual confidence. "A significant raise, too. Just call off your lawyers, and we can put this whole mess behind us." Her tone shifted then, from awkward apology to thinly veiled threat. You don't want to drag this out, Harold. Legal battles are expensive, exhausting. And frankly, do you really want to risk ruining your reputation over this? That's when I realized something. Karen still didn't get it. She thought I cared about money or titles. She thought I could be bought off with promises of a cushy office and a bigger paycheck. But she underestimated me, and not for the first time. No deal, I said flatly, cutting her off mid-sentence. My voice was calm, but firm. You humiliated me, Karen. You treated me like I was nothing. Now you'll learn what happens when you underestimate someone. Her jaw tightened, and for a split second, I saw the real Karen, the one who didn't care about apologies or fairness. The one who only cared about winning. Fine, she snapped, standing up abruptly. What do you want, Harold? Name your price. And there it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. She thought this was about money, but it wasn't. It was about respect, about justice, about proving that people like me mattered. I took a deep breath and looked her straight in the eye. First, full reinstatement of my patent rights. Second, a public apology, not just to me, but to everyone who's ever been treated the way you treated me. Third, a percentage of all past and future profits generated by my invention. Karen's face went pale. That's insane, she sputtered. Do you have any idea how much money we're talking about? Yes, I replied, my voice steady. And if you don't agree, I'll take this to court. Trust me, Karen, the media will love this story. She stared at me, her polished facade cracking under the weight of reality. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. She knew I had her cornered. Reluctantly, she nodded. Fine, you win. As she turned to leave, I called after her. One more thing, Karen. Don't ever underestimate someone again. You never know when they might surprise you. She didn't respond, but as she walked away, I couldn't help but smile. This wasn't just a victory for me. It was a lesson for her. And lessons, as I've learned, stick best when they hurt. After Karen left my house, I knew the real battle was just beginning. Her agreement to my terms wasn't the end. It was the starting line of a whole new race. She might have said yes in the heat of the moment, but I had no illusions about her intentions. People like Karen don't change overnight, and I suspected she'd try to wiggle her way out of our deal as soon as she thought she could. Rachel, my lawyer, wasted no time putting everything in writing. She drafted a formal settlement agreement that spelled out every detail: the reinstatement of my patent rights, the public apology, and the profit-sharing arrangement. To make sure Karen couldn't weasel out of it, Rachel included penalties for non-compliance, fines so steep they'd cripple Innovatech if they tried to back out. When the document landed on Karen's desk, she didn't sign it right away. Instead, her lawyers sent us pages of revisions, trying to water down my demands. But Rachel was ready for them. Every attempt to weaken the agreement was met with firm resistance, and after weeks of tense negotiations, we finally reached a version both sides could live with. The public apology came first. It was scheduled during an investor meeting, a move I insisted on because I wanted everyone to see it happen. On the day of the event, I arrived early, sitting quietly in the back of the room while executives filed in, whispering among themselves. Karen stood at the podium, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. For once, her usual bravado was gone, replaced by something closer to shame. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I owe you all an explanation and an apology." She went on to admit her mistakes, acknowledging how she'd mishandled my situation and disrespected my contributions. She even mentioned my name, thanking me for my innovation and dedication. The room fell silent as she spoke, and when she finished, there was scattered applause. Not enthusiastic, but enough to acknowledge the gravity of the moment. As satisfying as it was to watch Karen eat crow, the real victory came later, when the financial details were finalized. The percentage of profits I negotiated turned out to be substantial, not just a token gesture, but a genuine share of the wealth my invention had created. Rachel explained that this would secure my future, ensuring I'd never have to worry about money again. More importantly, it gave me freedom. The kind of freedom most people only dream of. But the biggest surprise came from within myself. Before all this, I'd spent years doubting my worth. I let others define me, convincing myself that I was too old, too slow, too unimportant to make waves. Facing off against Karen changed that. I realized I wasn't just some washed-up inventor. I was someone who mattered. Someone whose ideas shaped industries, whose courage inspired others, and whose resilience proved that age and health didn't determine value. Word of my fight spread quickly, thanks in part to the media coverage. Reporters called me the David who took down Goliath, comparing my struggle to other underdog stories. Strangers reached out, sharing their admiration and gratitude. Some were inventors like me, feeling emboldened to stand up for their rights. Others were ordinary people, moved by the idea that one person could challenge a giant and win. Karen resigned not long after the dust settled. Officially, the company cited personal reasons, but rumors swirled that she couldn't handle the fallout. Whatever the truth, her departure marked the end of an era for Innovatech and the beginning of a brighter chapter for me. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just about patents or profits. It was about proving that fairness isn't negotiable, that respect is earned, and that no one is too small to demand justice. And as I walked out of that investor meeting, head held high, I knew I'd done something extraordinary, not just for myself, but for anyone who'd ever been told they didn't matter. Because sometimes, standing up doesn't just change your life, it changes the world. With Karen gone and the settlement in place, life began to shift in ways I never expected. The first change happened almost immediately. Innovatech started treating me differently. Or rather, they finally started treating me like a human being. People who had once ignored me or whispered behind my back now greeted me with respect. Some even apologized for not standing up for me when Karen fired me. It felt strange at first, like stepping into a world where gravity worked backward. But I accepted their gestures graciously, knowing it wasn't about holding grudges. It was about moving forward. The financial impact of the settlement was just as transformative. For years, I'd lived paycheck to paycheck, pouring every spare penny into my inventions without much thought for the future. Now suddenly, I didn't have to worry anymore. The profit-sharing agreement meant a steady stream of income that would last for the rest of my life. Rachel helped me set up a trust fund and invest wisely, ensuring I'd be comfortable no matter what happened next. But money wasn't the most important thing, not by a long shot. What truly mattered was the sense of purpose I rediscovered. With my patents restored and Innovatech legally bound to honor my contributions, I returned to work. But on my own terms, they gave me a private lab, free from corporate interference, where I could focus on new ideas without worrying about deadlines or budgets. Young engineers and researchers flocked to collaborate with me, eager to learn from someone whose name had become synonymous with resilience and innovation. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. Some executives still resented me, whispering that I'd gotten lucky or played dirty. I heard through the grapevine that a few tried to sabotage my projects, but they quickly realized it wasn't worth the risk. Thanks to the settlement, I had legal protection, and more importantly, I had allies. My story had inspired others to speak up, creating a ripple effect throughout the company. Employees who had been afraid to challenge unfair practices found courage in my example. Slowly but surely, Innovatech began to change, not because of any grand initiative, but because people demanded better. Outside the company, my newfound fame brought unexpected opportunities. Journalists wrote glowing profiles about me, calling me everything from a modern-day hero to a symbol of hope for inventors everywhere. Universities invited me to give lectures, sharing my journey with students who dreamed of making a difference. At first, public speaking terrified me. I'm not exactly the charismatic type, but over time, I grew to enjoy it. Seeing young faces light up with excitement reminded me why I started inventing in the first place. to make the world a little brighter, one idea at a time. Karen's resignation marked the end of an era, but her legacy lingered, in the cautionary tales told around water coolers and in the way the company restructured its leadership. Her replacement, a soft-spoken woman named Elena Martinez, seemed determined to avoid repeating Karen's mistakes. She reached out to me early on, asking for advice on fostering a culture of respect and innovation. To my surprise, I found myself liking her. She listened genuinely, valued input from all levels of the organization, and prioritized ethical decision-making. Under her leadership, Innovatech slowly shed its toxic reputation, becoming a place where creativity thrived instead of being stifled. As for Karen, she disappeared from the spotlight almost entirely. Rumor had it she was working on a startup focused on ethical leadership, though no one took her seriously. Occasionally, I'd see her name pop up in articles or interviews, always framed as a lesson in hubris. Karma, as they say, has a way of catching up with you. Through it all, I learned something profound. Power isn't about control or dominance. True power comes from using your voice, your skills, and your determination to create positive change. By standing up to Karen, I didn't just reclaim my life. I helped pave the way for others to do the same. And that, more than anything, is the legacy I'm proudest of leaving behind. Life after the Innovatech battle felt like stepping into a completely different world, one where I was no longer invisible. The quiet, unassuming inventor who once tinkered alone in his garage had become someone people looked up to. It was humbling, really. Every day brought new opportunities, challenges, and reminders of how far I'd come. But more than anything, it gave me time to reflect on what truly mattered. My workshop became a sanctuary again, just like it had been before Innovatech entered my life. Only this time, it wasn't just mine. It was shared with others. Young inventors, eager students, and curious minds began showing up at my door, asking for advice or simply wanting to learn. Some came with wild ideas that needed refining. Others arrived with nothing but passion and a desire to create. I welcomed them all, finding joy in mentoring the next generation of thinkers and dreamers. Watching their eyes light up when an idea clicked was worth more than any paycheck. One of the most rewarding parts of this new chapter was seeing the ripple effects of my fight against Karen. Word of my story spread beyond Innovatech, inspiring other employees in similar situations to stand up for themselves. People started reaching out, not just from my industry, but from all walks of life, sharing how my courage gave them the push they needed to confront injustice in their own workplaces. A factory worker emailed me about negotiating fair wages after years of being underpaid. A teacher wrote about challenging her school board to improve working conditions for staff. Each message filled me with gratitude, knowing my actions had sparked something bigger than I ever imagined. Of course, not everything was perfect. There were days when old doubts crept back in, whispering that maybe I didn't deserve all this attention or success. But then I'd remember the countless hours spent pouring my heart into inventions, the sacrifices I made along the way, and the fact that I'd fought tooth and nail to protect what was rightfully mine. Those memories silenced the doubts every time. I earned this, not because I was special, but because I refused to let anyone take away my dignity or my dreams. As the months turned into years, Innovatech continued to evolve under Elena's leadership. The company became known not just for its groundbreaking products, but for its commitment to fairness and innovation. Employees spoke proudly of their workplace, and public perception shifted dramatically. Even former critics admitted the change was refreshing. Seeing the transformation firsthand made me hopeful, not just for Innovatech, but for businesses everywhere. If one stubborn old man could inspire such a shift, imagine what others could achieve if they stood firm in their convictions. Karen's name faded into obscurity, though occasionally I'd hear whispers of her latest venture failing or falling apart. It wasn't schadenfreude that brought me peace. It was the knowledge that she couldn't run from the lessons her actions taught everyone, including herself. Karma, as unpredictable as it is, has a funny way of balancing things out. Today, As I sit in my workshop surrounded by tools, blueprints, and half-finished projects, I feel a deep sense of fulfillment. My health may not be perfect, and my hands might shake a little more than they used to, but none of that matters. What matters is the legacy I'm building, a legacy of resilience, creativity, and standing up for what's right. And so I keep working, not because I have to, but because I want to. Because there are still problems to solve, ideas to explore, and lives to touch. Because the world needs people who believe in fairness, who refuse to stay silent, and who prove that even the smallest voices can roar the loudest when it counts. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to the moment Karen fired me. Back then, I thought my life was over. Now, I know it was just beginning.